Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Welcome back. Thank you for your patience. We had a little tech issue, internet problems. Um, we fixed it. We're gonna hang out for a little bit. We'll bring on Ikaika, talk story while we get everybody back on. Um, what's up, Ikaika?
How you doing, brother Mel? So sorry.
Hey, man, it
Uh,
happens, guys. That's when you go live. When we go live, that's what happens. So but I appreciate you guys' patience, and we'll talk star a little bit until we get everybody back on. We had a really nice crew on, and I hope they all come back. But
I'm
again,
not
tonight,
fuzzy.
folks, huh?
Am I fuzzy? I actually had to switch to my son's laptop.
Yeah, no, you're fine. You're fine, man. You're fine. It's we can hear you, we can see you. You're as good looking as ever. So welcome everybody again. Happy Monday. I know we're a little late. No worry. We're gonna use up the hour with Ikaika Anderson, candidate for Lieutenant Governor, State of Hawaii. Before we get started, I just want to say thank you all for the well wishes. It's been almost a week since we were on. I know if I'm repeating, we just lost Ikaika. I'm not sure what the heck happened. Oh, there he is. Oh, he scared me. He scared me. All right, it's running good. Everybody's saying it's running good. So anyway, I'm back. We've been trying to get candidates to come on and share their platforms, their stories. We've put out the call. Very few have come back, and Ikaika has agreed to come on and talk story. Big lieutenant governor race happening as we speak. Ballots have dropped. People are voting. So we want to give you all the opportunity to meet these candidates and learn their platforms and make some wise decisions. So we have Ikaika tonight. Wednesday night we'll have our COVID show with Dr. Lee Altenberg, Dr. Tim Brown, and on Thursday, special night. We're not going to have a show on Friday. On Thursday we'll have Jill Tokuda, who's running for U.S. Congress. So she will be on Thursday night. So put it in you guys' calendars and I, it's an exciting time of year for everyone. I've said on numerous occasions, the state is at crossroads. We are at crossroads. The state legislature, every seat is up for election, every single one of them. I don't recall the last time that happened. Maybe I just wasn't paying much attention. But this year, every seat is up. We got a governor's race, we got lieutenant governor's race, we got congressional races, we got mayor races, council races. We got just a ton of races, and we as a people get to decide who our new leaders will be. So I want to thank Ikaika for joining us tonight. Um, and he's already giggling and laughing, but welcome to the show, Ikaika. Welcome to the show.
Aloha Mel, Aloha Village. Much mahalo for the opportunity to talk story with you folks. My sincere apologies for the technical glitches. My laptop's been working just fine, but for whatever reason tonight, it decided not to work.
Well,
So I've actually piped in on my son's laptop. God bless him for allowing me to borrow his. And here we go.
take your laptop tomorrow and gently place it in the trash can, and then go buy one just like his, and you'll be fine.
That's what my son
Yeah.
would tell me. Dad, don't be so cheap. Just replace your laptop.
Anyway, again, welcome, Ikaika. We'll give you an opportunity to introduce yourself. I've known Ikaika for gosh, I don't even know. I mean, well over 10 years, probably closer to 15. Honey Ann Holden Charles just said we voted
Thank you.
for Ikaika.
Much mahalo.
No, voted for you. Um, it's no secret, I support Ikaika, and I'll give my reasons as the show progresses. But I've known Ikaika for a long time, and Ikaika is his heart is for our state. No doubt about it. His not just Honolulu. Like a lot of politicians forget about neighbor islands. Yes, we will, Cynthia. We will get to the questions. I know some of you posted questions, and
And
I will be posing those questions. And if you have questions, put them in
yes,
the comments, and we will get it to Ikaika. No need to be nasty. I know some people can get nasty, but we'll ask the questions that come up, and Ikaika is open to answer them all. So anyway, enough of me. I'm gonna slide out. Ikaika, introduce yourself. Tell us about you and why Lieutenant Governor.
Well, first of all, again, Mel, much mahalo to you in the village for allowing me on. I also sincerely appreciate Auntie Cynthia bringing up the questions that have already been asked to ensure that we get answers to those tonight. Auntie, thank you very much for the reminder. Uh, I am actually very much looking forward to addressing the questions that have already been raised. So much mahalo for that. I'm Ikaika Anderson, former chair of the Honolulu City Council. I left the Honolulu City Council nearly 2 years ago, right as my term was going to end on the council. Returned home to take care of my grandparents to make sure they were okay. Yes, I accepted employment at the Masons Union when I left the Honolulu City Council. What I did not share at the time is that I was also working on gaining primary physical custody of my keiki. Was in the midst of a divorce. Out of respect to my keiki and to their mother, my now former spouse, I didn't share those things. And it likely would have greatly altered people's opinion of me, probably in a positive light had I shared that. But I wasn't willing to do that at the time out of respect to my children and their mother. But I accepted employment at Local 630 because I needed employment while I was going through the divorce, which cost me thousands of dollars. I also needed to work at a place that was going to keep me secluded. It was closed to the general public as well as our membership. Additionally, I was in the office really no more than 4 to 5 hours a day. The rest of the time I worked from home, enabled me to take care of my grandparents, run their errands, as well as get my keiki online every morning for distance learning. I was in the process of becoming a single dad right when I left the council. Even though I had really just started working on my gaining physical custody and on my separation, I was a parent at home, getting my keiki logged on in the morning onto their computers with their teachers, making sure that they did what they needed to do before I headed to work and then headed back home a few hours later. So people ask, Ikaika, why run for lieutenant governor? I can sum up my reasoning for running for lieutenant governor in one word: leadership. I really feel that there's a real disconnect at the executive level of state government between the governor and the lieutenant governor. For 6.5 of the 11 years I served on the Honolulu City Council, I was a council vice chair. Not the starting quarterback on the team, but the starting running back on the team, working with the chair to help to advance the council's policies. As a lieutenant governor, same thing. I'm not going to be the starting quarterback. I know that. But I already have experience of being a starting running back on the team, and I'm a team player. During my time as the council chair, though, I was an elected executive responsible for the legislative branch of government of more than 155 employees, a budget of more than $23 million, that represented the more than 1 million residents on Oahu. We also must remember that the lieutenant governor can become governor with no notice should the governor fall ill, or when the governor leaves the state, those powers don't go with the governor. They stay home here with the lieutenant governor. I had to manage the Honolulu City Council through COVID. We were one of the first branches of government to close. I'm not sorry we did that. I made the decision with the information I had in front of me, largely through working with people like Dr. Scott Miskovich, who I have a lot of trust in and aloha for. We kept people safe. When we identified an outbreak of COVID in the city clerk's office at 9 a.m. on a Tuesday, by 12 noon, Dr. Miskovich and his team were at Honolulu Hale conducting testing voluntary for any city employee who wanted it. We identified nearly a half dozen more positive cases, which again enabled us to take people out of the workplace, do contact tracing, and keep people safe. That's the experience that I had as an elected executive. The final decisions rested with me. I had to make the calls, oftentimes tough ones, but be held accountable for them. As lieutenant governor, when I say we, I mean my team, we're looking to build more workforce housing like we did here in Honolulu, expand on the tiny home village concept or kauhale concept for our houseless population, which we started in Waimanalo, extended to Kailua, and are now working on in places like West Oahu. But I envision working on that process primarily across the state with your council members, because it's your council members for you neighbor islanders who are home with you all the time. Your state lawmakers live in Honolulu for close to 4 months a year. But Aro Kaneshiro and Mason Chalk and Kipukai Kuali'i and Billy DeCosta folks are home with you folks all the time. I think that's where we have the conversations on where we're going to put these facilities. Once we find the available state lands that can host workforce housing and kauhale villages, talking to your council members and having the hearings at home in your communities with them to see what's suitable. So these are some of the ideas that we want to bring about as a former elected executive. And I also look forward to addressing some of the questions that have already come up, Brother Mel. If we could start with some of the vacation rental questions, if you have those queued up, that would be great.
Well, let me just pop this one up because it just came up here. There's a couple that just popped up. This one's interesting. Would you consider yourself to be a part of the Old Boys Club? How so, or why not?
Well, let's be honest. Sylvia Luke has upwards of 12, at least 12, probably more by now, labor unions in this state, and every single insider you can imagine supporting her campaign. My campaign is fueled primarily by a small platoon, a small hui of volunteers with 2 paid staff members. So do I consider myself part of the Old Boys Club? Absolutely not. None of the insiders in this state want to see me elected lieutenant governor. What their reasons are, you'd have to ask them. I couldn't tell you. But the largest labor unions in this state have decided to support one of my opponents. Now, I did seek their support. I didn't get it. I don't begrudge them for going with my opponent. But the question is, am I part of the Old Boys Club? Well, obviously not, by looking at the support that we have and that we've garnered. So no, I don't consider myself a part of the Old Boys Club by any means. I'd also point out that I've never, ever held a partisan office. I've only been elected to a nonpartisan county elected position. Same as you, Mel.
Yeah. And I know the feeling of when I ran for mayor, man. I had one endorsement from Shopo. Yeah, 0. So I know the feeling, man. But in a way, it's actually good that you don't owe anybody anything, and you can perform your duties somewhat independently by focusing on your constituents and not special interests. There's so much of that now. I think that's part of the huge problem.
Well, I have to say, Mel, with organized labor, as I've talked to the membership, and I still talk to the membership of these organized labor unions whose leaders have decided not to support me. But these organized labor union members have the same desires, the same hopes, the same needs that all of us have. They need access to quality health care. They need access to housing that they can afford, whether it's rental housing or fee simple to own housing. They need access to good paying jobs that are going to provide solid benefits when they retire, other post-employment benefits, whether it be in the form of a pension or in the form of a 401k. Okay. And I just saw a note come up from Keala Wolf that union members don't always support their union candidates. It's very true. And that's why I've made it a point to still talk with union members who will talk to me, regardless of who their leadership decided to support. I don't need a union leader's endorsement to go and talk to their members. I will talk to anybody. After getting elected to the Honolulu City Council, I was approached by different groups of people who openly supported other candidates for the council seat that I was elected to. I met with them all. That was my job. So if elected lieutenant governor, I'll still be able to represent the memberships of all of those labor leaders who decided to endorse other candidates. And I'm going to continue to reach out to these members because they're taxpayers in this state and they have a right to representation.
Awesome. I had made a list of questions that I had because sometimes the viewers don't pose questions, but I did want to, because there's one of my questions was about the lieutenant governor's relationship with the neighbor islands. And Kea Ohana just asked, or not really asked, he said, our governor Lieutenant Governor and state representatives need to have more town halls for updates and suggestions on the neighbor islands during their terms, not just care during the election time. I got to tell you, it frustrates me when I see around election time, all of a sudden, your representatives, everybody pops up. The lieutenant, I had never seen Josh Green on our island, and all of a sudden he's on Kauai a lot. You know, and it's everyone. My question, and again going along with Kea Ohana's question, what are your plans to build that relationship with the neighbor islands as lieutenant governor?
As lieutenant governor, our office will have a solid presence on the neighbor islands. As a Honolulu City Council member, I was Honolulu's representative to the Hawaii State Association of Counties for years. And I didn't forge relationships with my neighbor island colleagues. I formed genuine friendships with my neighbor island colleagues. I've been fortunate enough to be a guest in the homes of many of my neighbor island colleagues. I've been a guest at Mel Raposo's home. I've been a guest at Aro Kaneshiro's home. Been a guest at Dickie Chang's home. These are the types of friendships that I've had. When I knew that I wasn't going to run for another office during the 2020 election, when I actually knew that was in 2018, I didn't all of a sudden cease my involvement with the Hawaii State Association of Counties and stop going to the neighbor islands. I kept doing what I was doing, going to Kauai, going to Maui County, going to Molokai even in Maui County and Hawaii Island, both Hilo and Kona, because that was the job. Everything cannot be Oahu centric, and I don't expect people to come to Oahu. But let's be honest, the governor, whoever she or he may be, isn't going to have the time to dedicate going to the neighbor islands on a thoroughly regular basis. The lieutenant governor can, though, if he desires to do that. That's going to be one of my key points. Having meetings on the neighbor islands at least quarterly. But I would call on your council members for kokua with that. No disrespect to the state lawmakers. I'd invite them too. But the reason I would coordinate with the council members is because those folks are home all the time on a consistent basis with you folks. They don't travel regularly to be on Oahu for session. So I just find that it's easier to coordinate with your county elected officials. And those are the folks that you call when you have issues that affect your everyday lives. If your trash doesn't get picked up, a few years ago when Mel Raposo was the council chair, people were calling Mel. They weren't calling the senator or the representative. If you had an issue with the landfill, Mel got that call too. I just feel that your county elected officials are so close to the people, particularly on the neighbor islands. So I'm committing that my involvement with the neighbor islands and my friendships with the neighbor island elected officials will continue as lieutenant governor. That's not going to stop.
Yeah, I still get those calls, man. I still get those calls. But much appreciated. That is your, I guess, of representation is really. Anyway, you mentioned. Okay, now my signal is weak. I don't know what the heck is going on. Anyway, you mentioned the relationship between the governor and the lieutenant governor is so vital. And what is your relationship with all of the candidates? We're not going to isolate. We're not going to. What is your relationship with all of the gubernatorial candidates right now?
My grandfather and my uncle both served with Governor Cayetano, both during his time as a state senator and as lieutenant governor and governor. We enjoy a solid friendship with the Cayetano family. I got to know Kai Kahele not so much as a state senator or as a U.S. congressman, but as the fisherman who was born and raised in Miloli'i on Hawaii Island. He became a friend. Same thing with Josh Green. I got to know Josh as a doctor. He helped my former spouse through some rough times dealing with her personal health. She was able to reach out to him sometimes late in the evening and he'd get right back. So I'm friends with all three of them. So I will, under no circumstances, support one friend over the other two friends in that race. Likewise, I'll point out, none of them are campaigning for me or against me either. And if I were to pick a candidate, let's say I pick Josh Green and Kaikahele wins. Now my office is at a disadvantage because I've soured that relationship. And that's also going to harm my ability to be able to produce for the people of Hawaii as lieutenant governor. So I need to avoid that. I need to be able to be elected lieutenant governor on my own merits. And that's exactly what I plan to do. Now, I do have supporters on my campaign team who are supporting Vicky Cayetano, who are supporting Kaikahele, and who are supporting Josh Green. And sometimes they'll wave signs for their gubernatorial candidate when they wave signs for me. There's not a whole heck of a lot I can do about that. But personally, I'm running my own race.
Awesome. I do want to get to some of the specific questions that did come in because I have a feeling we're going to get more. And I'm just going to read it verbatim as it was posted. Let me just start with the first one. It says, while he was my Honolulu council person from Kailua, yes, he helped limit commercial activity at our beaches, but he did allow select vendors to receive unlimited usage permits to send kayakers to Flat Island and inundate the swimming areas of Kailua Beach. Under his regulations, select tour businesses were able to run wild. Please ask about this.
Okay. First of all, I, at no time, allowed permits for select businesses to go to the Mokulua Islands. That is absolutely, patently, unequivocally false. Okay. The commercial kayak operations that go to the Mokulua Islands operate out of a commercially zoned private piece of property across the street from Kailua Beach that the city has no regulation over. So how that works, Brother Mel, I'll use you as an example here. You and Patsy come to Kailua and you want to rent a kayak. You go to the Kailua Beach Center, you pick up a kayak, you put it on a hand truck trailer, and you and Patsy push or pull that kayak on the hand truck trailer under your own power from the private commercial property across the street to Kailua Beach. That is absolutely legal. And there was nothing I could do as a city council member to prohibit that. That business operated on a privately owned, appropriately zoned commercial property. That's the truth there. What I did do, though, is kill all of the permits that the city allowed at Kailua Beach Park on city property to rent kayaks. And the reason we killed it, and actually, I'm sorry, let me back up there. Those permits weren't to rent kayaks. They were to rent windsurfing equipment. What some of the businesses who held the permits for windsurfing did is on their own, they illegally offered for rent stand-up paddleboards and kayaks. And when they failed to self-regulate, I took the action of introducing legislation to pull all of the permits. Because even the folks who had the permits for windsurfing weren't listening. They were renting out wares that they weren't legally allowed to under their permits. So that did stop. That type of activity where people were renting out for commercial purposes, watercraft at Kailua Beach Park on city property stopped with the bills that I introduced. But we have to differentiate, Mel, where people are getting their watercraft now is either from across the street of Kailua Beach Park or in Kailua Town at other commercially zoned properties. And then people take the kayak, attach it to the roof of their car, and drive it from Kailua Town to the beach. That's permissible, and the city can't stop that. But as Auntie Cynthia Rubenstein also just pointed out, the Department of Land and Natural Resources, which is a state agency that the city has no control over, did give permits for commercial kayak landing on the Mokulua Islands. The state could have stopped all of the commercial kayak landings on the Mokulua if they wanted to. The state didn't want to do that. So I did what I could by ceasing the availability of permits for any of these watercraft.
Awesome. Thank you for that. We run into that same problem here where these commercial operators are operating off of private property. Exactly what you're saying, loading up the kayaks on the roofs of rental cars, and they're hitting our rivers and so forth. Okay, next one. Why did Ikaika Anderson?
No, the city wouldn't have had to do what we did. That's the other reason I'm running. That's the reason I'm running for lieutenant governor, as I mentioned, leadership. Had the state done their job in regulating the visitor industry, it wouldn't have been left to the city and county of Honolulu with the limited resources we had to try to make a dent in the problem.
Thank you for that. Next one, why did Ikaika Anderson, as chair of the Zoning and Planning Committee, support putting tourists in residential neighborhoods, require additional permits be given for B&Bs, short-term vacation rentals, and B&Bs to make it easier to qualify for permits? Also, the allegation that you attended a fundraiser for your campaign sponsored by Airbnb in San Francisco. So let's start with the permits for vacation rental Airbnbs.
Okay, let's right now, please, define owner-occupied bed and breakfast and standalone transient vacation unit, or TVU. An owner-occupied B&B is a property owner renting out rooms in their primary residence where they hold a homeowner's exemption, renting out rooms on a short-term basis of less than 30 days. That is a bed and breakfast. A standalone transient vacation unit is someone living in Kailua, renting out their home in Kahuku, in this example, where they don't live, where they don't hold a homeowner's exemption, renting that home out for stays of less than 30 days. I have always been of the belief that I should be able to share my primary residence where I live full-time and where I hold a homeowner's exemption with any type of tenant I want to. That's a belief I had. That belief will never change. If I feel that I'm willing to accommodate visitors in my house with me where I live once a month, twice a month, I think that's my right. If I want to rent out rooms in my home or a cottage on my property long-term and have Mel Raposo and his wife and his grandchildren sharing my primary property with me all day, every day, likewise, that's my right too. But I don't believe that the same right extends to a standalone transient vacation unit, only where the homeowner occupant lives as their primary residence. What I did support are bed and breakfast permits in residential areas for those homeowners who desire to share their homes on a short-term basis. It's a commercial activity, regardless of the type of tenant. You're still receiving payment. You're still receiving payment for the room, whether it's a stay of more than 30 days or less than 30 days. Here's the deal, though. When you are the homeowner occupant, and I've seen this because I've had a number of neighbors who have done it, the homeowner occupants in my neighborhood anyway were always very careful who they shared their primary residence with, because if they had their tenants raising hell in the front yard at 2 a.m. or doing cannonballs into the backyard pool at 2 a.m, I'm not going to allow that, because now all of a sudden I'm the Okole of the neighborhood where I live. Additionally, I put into my proposed legislation very strict noise requirements as well as parking requirements that had to be met. And the third time you had a proven violation from the City Department of Planning and Permitting in Honolulu, you'd lose your permit. You're done. But I was only willing to do that for homeowner occupants. And I understand that there are some people who have the belief, no, Ikaika, if you want to share your home with another tenant because you need the money, you have to do it long term. I'm sorry. That's something I'm philosophically opposed to. And I'm never going to advocate that position. I just can't. But transient vacation units where the owner occupant is not present, that is an entirely different matter. And I have never said, let's have a proliferation of short-term transient vacation units where the owner occupant does not live on site. I've never advocated that type of a policy. Now I also see this property here, this question. My neighbor lives on property and has 5 units that sleep 6 people. Under your belief, this is acceptable. No, Heidi, I never said that. There would have to be a regulation as to how many rooms you could rent out. I would allow anywhere from 2 to 3 rooms. Under the long-term rental, I'd be able to welcome 6 other people if I wanted to. And if these people made noise all day, every day, Heidi, that'd be a worse situation for you. So under my proposal, Heidi, it would actually be less, because we would be talking about a maximum of 3 rooms, possibly even as little as 2. But it wouldn't be, I've got a 6-bedroom house, I live in 1 bedroom, I'm going to rent out the other 5. That wouldn't be legal under what I'm proposing, or what I proposed when I was on the city council. And my proposal actually required anyone applying for a permit to show on their plan which 2 bedrooms they were going to use for short-term rentals. So if you have a 10-bedroom home, pick your 2 bedrooms, and you got to show the 2 bedrooms on your plans to the Department of Planning and Permitting. And you also have to welcome the Department of Planning and Permitting to come and inspect your home upon demand. So there were strict parameters in place. Again, Heidi, I asked that you go and check out the legislation that I introduced. It seems that you're not familiar with it. I didn't advocate for anything that you're talking about here, not even close.
And then the second part of that question was that you attended a fundraiser for your campaign sponsored by Airbnb in San Francisco.
And real quick, again, going back to Heidi's point, we need long-term housing for residents. I would agree. But Heidi, if I don't want to share my home with long-term residents, I'm sorry, you don't get to determine that. That's not your right. It's mine. And we're going to have a philosophical difference there. You don't get to tell me that I either share my primary residence with long-term renters or with no one at all. I'm sorry, you don't get that right. That's not something I will ever support. Going back to the question on
the fundraiser
in San Francisco, Mel. Yes. Airbnb did host a fundraiser for me in San Francisco, and I never denied that fact. But before the fundraiser happened, I went to Airbnb and I explained to them what my position is on transient vacation units. And I also explained to them what my position is on owner-occupied B&Bs. And Airbnb executives told me, well, Ikaika, we feel we need more transient vacation units. I said, I can't help you there, guys. I said, so if there's a caveat that I support additional standalone transient vacation units without the owner-occupant present for you to host a fundraiser, I said, then don't do it, because I'm not going to be able to help you. They hosted the fundraiser anyway. Bill 89 came up sometime after that. And as we know, Bill 89 severely cracked down on regulations of all short-term rentals, both B&Bs and transit vacation units. And the position of Airbnb, the official position of Airbnb, was against Bill 89. I supported Bill 89. I was one of the chief supporters of Bill 89. And Airbnb knew that position before they held the fundraiser. They held it anyway. But I was upfront with Airbnb every step of the way. They knew where I was. So my vote wasn't for sale then, and it's not for sale now. That's the only thing that I was comfortable with doing the fundraiser. I told them up front, I can't help you with your position. They knew that.
Yeah, I think even on Kauai, when we were going through the vacation rental revisions, the whole concept of an Airbnb, or not an Airbnb, but a B&B, a bed and breakfast, was where the owner of the home would open up their home and provide breakfast. That's what it meant, a bed and breakfast, and the visitor could learn the culture, learn the area around the breakfast table. But along the line, that got lost. In fact, Airbnb, if you go to Airbnb, it's standalone TVRs, transient vacation rentals. They also offer bed and breakfasts, but I think a lot of people took advantage of bed and breakfast. So even on Kauai, to have a B&B permit, you have to live in the home, and you cannot contract out the meal service. You cannot be an absentee owner. You cannot have a manager. You got to live in the home. You have to be present at all times. So,
and here's the other thing too, Mel. Scotty's question, which is a good one. Problem is, the owner might go on vacation when they rent. How do we monitor that? Under the proposal that I offered, one of the owner occupants, Mel, in the case of your home, I'm sorry, I'm going to use you as an example again. If you go on vacation or you go on a business trip out of state, So long as your wife is home and she happens to be an owner occupant with you on your homeowner's exemption, then you could rent. But if you and Patsy take off and you figure, I'm going to have my son come and monitor, that's not allowed. And if any of your neighbors call the Department of Planning and Permitting and you're found to be off property, then again, that's your first violation. 3 violations, you lose your permit. You're done. You lose your permit after three violations. 3 strikes and you're out. So in Honolulu, we really tried to tighten this thing as best as we could. But again, going back to Airbnb, Mel, I clearly explained my position to Airbnb executives, also the VRBO executives. If you guys are looking for someone to help you legalize more standalone transient units, you got 8 other council members to talk to. Don't waste your breath on me, because I will not help you. Yeah. And they knew that. And even after they held my fundraiser, Mel, I voted against Airbnb.
Yeah.
Why weren't they upset? Because I told them up front where I was. I never lied to them. They knew where I was.
All right, let's get to some other questions here. And we will get back to tourism, because I wanna hear your position on tourism as a whole. But how do we get Olelo, Hawaii into public schools so that we are, quote, equal to that of English, unquote, as stated in the law?
And I believe that also speaks to a level of funding, Mel. There are 2 official languages in the state of Hawaii. English and Olelo Hawaii, the Hawaiian language. We need to ensure that there's adequate funding to be able to fund both outside of the Hawaiian language immersion schools that are already available. So I think that's a big part of that, Mel, is funding. And as Lieutenant Governor, I'm willing to work with the next governor on that initiative to ensure that those things are funded.
All right. Thank you. I mean, can you imagine that there was a time where Olelo Hawaii was not allowed? We've come a long way, but we still got a long way to go to get that language back in the schools.
My grandfather who raised me was raised by his grandmother back in the 1930s. She spoke Hawaiian fluently, but she didn't encourage him to speak Hawaiian because she was taught that keiki speaking Hawaiian only ensured that the keiki wouldn't get ahead. So while Tutu taught my pop to appreciate his culture, she also taught him that English, as well as attending an English standard school, which Roosevelt High School, where he went to, was at the time an English standard school. Our kupuna instilled in their keiki, like my grandfather, English is the way. And to the detriment of our language and our culture.
All right. Speaking of schools, we had a question about how do you feel the state right now is handling the COVID situation in schools? They've lifted the mask mandates. The interesting thing, which I was kind of confused, was the quarantine requirements when they came out with the new rules. If you were exposed to COVID in school, you had to, I forget which way it was now, but anyway, if you were exposed in school or out of school, you were forced to quarantine and isolate. And if you contracted, I believe it was in school, you didn't have to. You report back to school. What's your overall feeling on how the state is handling the COVID situation right now in our public schools?
Mel, I wouldn't be able to support eliminating the mask requirements indoors. From the science that I've seen, listening to the medical professionals who I've spoken with, that's just ill-advised. So I wouldn't be able to support lifting the mask mandates, at least inside. Got to remain when the keiki are inside. I'm sorry, that's my position at this point. During the height of COVID, I was also troubled that much of the regulations that were coming out from the state were inconsistent. I mean, if there was any consistency at all, it was government consistently being inconsistent. You'd have a mandate come out on a Monday, and then all of a sudden it's changing on a Wednesday. And people are asking, well, why the change, and not giving a satisfactory answer or even real reasoning as to what the necessities were for the change. That's never okay. It frustrates people, and that frustration turns into confusion and turns into anger. So if they're going to be mandates, the mandates need to be clearly explained and also justified. That's where I feel the state could have done better. Also, Mel, to give you an idea of the mandates being confusing, my 12-year-old twins, I have a son and daughter, Caleb and Kylie, 12-year-old twins who attend DOE public school. One of my keiki was exposed to COVID, I was told by the school. So I was told, that was my daughter. She had to isolate at home for 10 days at the time. So I asked the school administration, okay, I get that. Then I'll come pick up her brother and I'll have him isolate too. And administration told me, oh, no. You don't have to isolate your son. He wasn't exposed to that person. Only your daughter was. And I said, well, they ate dinner last night at the same table. They rode to school this morning in the same car. And they're going to ride home tonight in the same car. So they were certainly exposed to each other. And the school administration said, yeah, that doesn't meet our definition of exposure. So your son can continue coming to school. And I said, well, what if I don't want him to come to school? Oh, that's okay, Mr. Anderson. That'll just be unexcused absences then. So I had frustration and confusion with those policies myself.
Well, look at the numbers of clusters that came out of the schools. They never made an issue of it. And I think it was, this is where everything changed. When the federal funding changed, when the federal funding was stopped, all of a sudden COVID was not as important because now the state and the counties would have to foot the bill. All of a sudden, COVID wasn't dangerous anymore in Hawaii anyway. I mean, listen to all the experts, and please join us on Wednesday night when we have two of the leading experts on our show to talk about the new variants and so forth. And again, I said in the earlier part of the show, my older brother just tested positive yesterday. He's sick. He just took his second dose of Paxlovid tonight, but he's also immunocompromised. And this stuff is still around, but you don't hear it because it's funny. Was it a coincidence, or was it just that the state didn't want to pay the bills anymore? But the COVID's still here, and people still, the state hasn't really, they've given up. They've conceded and said, oh, well, guys, just go get it, and everyone's going to get it. But a lot of the clusters came out of the schools. And yes, Reina, it's still spreading. And this is why I'm concerned is I also think we should require masks in airplanes and in airports. Ikaika.
I agree with
Not
that
just
too.
schools. So, that's again, you go back to the confusion from the state, right? They came out and allowed everywhere else to open without masks, but not the school. So it made it look really stupid. And it was. But why aren't we allowing or requiring people in airports and airplanes to wear masks if you're going to have our kids wear? And I think that's where the mixed messages come out, right? Because the schools doesn't generate revenue. Airplanes and airports and restaurants and bars do. And that's where I've been saying for years now, we cannot allow the economics or the business people to push the medical decisions. That should be left up to the medical experts. And again, I a lot of people pissed off with my position on the masking, but it does work. It works, and it stops the spread, or it slows it down. Nothing's 100%.
Right.
But the pressure.
Here's where some people, though, Mel, get confused with the masks. They feel that, well, if I wear my mask, I'm protected. I'm protecting myself if I wear my mask. No. According to the medical experts, you sitting next to me on the plane are protecting me by you wearing your mask. But if I'm not wearing my mask, that's doing absolutely nothing for you. So when there's a requirement for everybody to mask, everyone is protecting everyone else from themselves by wearing the mask. There have been so many people I've talked to, Mel, who feel that so long as they wear their mask, they're okay. They don't understand that them wearing their mask is primarily to protect other people from them.
And again, that's because they watch the news, and our local politicians right now continue to say no worry. It's pretty much over. This
It's
anyway.
not over.
No,
It's
it
something we're
is
going to
not.
have to live with, but it's not over.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And again, like Dr. Tim Brown says, living with COVID doesn't mean you pretend it doesn't exist or that you ignore that it's very dangerous. Listen, I posted a Mayo Clinic video the other day, a YouTube video on my page, and the doctor out of the Mayo Clinic. Now, people say, "Oh, Mel, you get all these country doctors." Well, I would say Mayo Clinic is probably the best medical facility in the country, arguably. And I kind of believe what those guys say. More than a freaking governor or lieutenant governor, I can tell you that. Even if the lieutenant governor is a doctor, I don't care. The fact of the matter is, decisions are being made that aren't in the best interest of the public's health and safety. And unfortunately, God forbid, we are going to pay a price shortly. So anyway,
Well,
um, go ahead. Go
and
ahead.
right now, it's not over. I don't believe it's over anyway, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, just look at how many people that right now has it. It's like it just doesn't end. And thank God we got better therapeutics now. Thank God we got more treatments, but it doesn't take away the fact that this long COVID is real. And we'll talk more about this on Wednesday. Um, you did a session and you invited me, and thank you for allowing me to share that discussion with you on term limits and corruption. Um, I would ask you if you could expand on that again and share a little bit about your position on term limits.
Well, my position on term limits really has evolved. My grandfather, who raised me, served in the legislature for 20 years, as have some of his colleagues served for 20 years or longer. But nowadays, I just feel that people serve for upwards of 2 decades in the same legislative seat and time after time after time have the ability to run for re-election as an incumbent, and they use that incumbency to build up not only campaign contributions but also a fiefdom, which is hard, and it also makes it so that it's very difficult to successfully challenge an incumbent. So if you as an elected official are doing a good job, not saying, okay, well, you can't run anymore. You're just only going to be able to run for the same office from the comfort of your incumbency for a select amount of terms. Then you're going to need to move on. I also feel that there should be no fundraising whatsoever, not just no holding a fundraiser, but no fundraising whatsoever during a legislative session. That's not okay. Additionally, any state pensioner from the employee retirement system convicted of a felony should lose their entire pension and all of their accumulated health benefits, courtesy of the taxpayers of the state of Hawaii. You abuse your position of trust, you lose your pension, you lose your health benefits for the ill choice that you made to disregard the public trust. The state legislature is allowing convicted felons to keep half the pension. And when I asked one of my opponents why, she said, well, the state attorney general said that we, as the state legislature, have to allow at least half the pension because having a pension is a constitutional right. An opinion from an attorney general is just that, an opinion. When city attorneys told me that Louis Kealoha was entitled to the settlement that the Honolulu Police Commission wanted to give him, I told the Honolulu Police Commission, I absolutely disagree with you. And I told city attorneys I absolutely disagreed with them. Unfortunately, the police commission circumvented the city council and I never got to vote on the issue. But I wouldn't have sided with the attorneys. I would have sided with the taxpayer. It just defies logic to me that we're going to allow a convicted felon, not an accused wrongdoer, just a convicted one, that we're going to give them a pension of any sort. That defies logic. They don't deserve a pension if they abuse the public trust.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised that in the debate that was brought up, it was a constitutional right. Um, to,
I don't. I'm
that
sorry, I don't buy it.
No, I don't either, man. I mean, if you get convicted, you lose your pension. That's
Right.
it.
Right. You just broke the trust of the
It-
people who elected you. They shouldn't have to give you any benefits. I mean, that's not okay.
in fact, they should be paying back uh, in a way of a fine. Not. It was crazy. I was shocked to hear that the attorney general said that, and I was even more shocked to hear that the legislature bought it and and let it go without even challenging the opinion of the attorney general. Interestingly, this last session there was a lot of hoopla on campaign spending reform,
Mhm.
and yet in the article the other day, the legislature raised over $500,000. Different members of the legislature in that same period that they were saying we shouldn't be raising money during a session, but yet they felt it was okay to generate or make have fundraisers during that time. It's just it's hypocrisy, and all of that stuff needs to stop. It needs to stop.
Well, Mel, same thing. I, as a Honolulu City Council member, didn't feel it was okay to hold fundraisers when we were holding uh, committee hearings. Same thing. Now, Honolulu City Council members, like Kauai Council members, meet year round. But I
Mhm.
did everything possible to hold my fundraisers. I tried anyway. When we didn't have a, committee hearing. Additionally, for my committee, when I chaired the Committee on Zoning and Planning, and later on when I chaired other committees, I had my staff set my agenda. I'll never forget, I'm at a fundraiser. Somebody came to my fundraiser who had some stuff before my committee and asked me, "Hey, Ikaika, your committee hearing coming up in 2 weeks. Are my items going to be on the committee agenda?" And I asked, "Are you ready to go? Do you have all of your documents? Do you have everything from the Department of Planning and Permitting?" And the gentleman said, "Yes, I do." "So will you put me on?" And I said, "Well, it's interesting that you should ask me that. I don't write the agenda. See the lady over there, my chief of staff? Yeah, that's her. I pointed her out. I said, she writes my agenda. She gives it to me, and I sign it. She checks with the Department of Planning and Permitting to make sure all of the necessary documents are in place and that you've met all of the department's criteria and you're ready to come to the council. If you can satisfy her, she will put you on the agenda and I'll sign it." I said, "You don't even have to talk to me." But that was another reason why I did it that way. So when people actually called me to get on the agenda, I could tell them, "You need to call Gail Myers. I don't do that." And it made it cleaner, honestly.
We're going again. We got a lot of questions, so I just kind of want to hit them all because I know we're running out of time. But um, some people question if Hawaii even has a need for a lieutenant governor. Um, Back in the day, the lieutenant governor was in charge of elections. I think you're old enough to remember that.
Yes, Ben
But
Cayetano was the last lieutenant governor to be in charge of elections. And one of his political opponents made political fodder out of the fact that it was unfair for a sitting elected official to be the chief elections officer of the state when she or he could be running for another office.
yeah,
I don't buy that.
and
It's fine for the lieutenant governor to be the chief elections officer. It's not like they can cheat the system. They can't. They can't.
oh gosh. So
But going further,
I,
Mel, if I could, I also think it's fair to give the lieutenant governor an added responsibility, taking the state senate to 24 members from 25, and having the lieutenant governor serve as the president of the state senate. And the lieutenant governor would break a tie if, in fact, there was ever a 12-12 vote in the state senate. But I would even support a constitutional amendment. I would propose one to do that, eliminating the state senate by one, reducing the state senate's membership by one to 24, with the lieutenant governor serving as the president.
yeah, I think the governor or the legislature or collectively, the leaders need to look at giving the lieutenant governor a function, a true function,
Agreed.
and hopefully that'll happen. And And
Agree.
because I also believe that we should have a lieutenant governor. I don't think we should do away with the lieutenant governor's position. I just believe that we should, create a function, not necessarily elections, whatever it may be. I think I like your idea about being pretty much the tiebreaker on the Senate. I think that would be cool.
Give the lieutenant governor one other added responsibility. If I could, Mel, just take no more than a minute to address. Someone did bring up my leaving the city council early. Again, when I left the Honolulu City Council, as I explained earlier, yes, I went to work at a labor union. The reason I went to work at a labor union were twofold. One, it supplied me with income. It cost me thousands of dollars to go through gaining primary physical custody of my kids, which I didn't feel comfortable publicly sharing at the time, out of respect to my spouse and my children's mother. But also, Mel, the union hall was closed to members and the public, and I worked remotely much of the time. I was in the office half day. I worked from home in the mornings and I worked from home in the afternoons. My divorce cost me tens of thousands of dollars. And in looking for employment, there wasn't any employment that I was able to find that would be able to sustain my keiki and allow me to work more than 4 hours a day from the comfort of home, even into the evenings if I had to get the job done. Most places are going to require you to be in the office during all working hours. That's not something I was able to commit to at that time. Additionally, this was in September when I left the Honolulu City Council. I couldn't wait till January and just let all of that sit and fester for another 3 months, and at the same time taking care of my grandparents. I needed to address all of those things. So some people ask, well, now what? All of those issues are behind of my ohana now. I am divorced. I'm a single father. Yes, I'm still taking care of my grandparents, but the family situation has resolved itself. My former spouse has relocated to the U.S. mainland. My keiki actually just came home today from spending the summer with their mom. But that's why I accepted employment with Local 630. I'll also point out that in June of 2021, my attorney informed me that my divorce would be finalized in July. It was at that time in June, I believe around June 18th of 2021, when I left employment with the Masons Union, because I was able to return to the private sector. I actually became self-employed, but the divorce was finalized. I no longer needed to pay an attorney. The alimony was all taken care of. All of that was set. And that's when I moved on. But I welcome anybody else asking those questions. And the reason I bring it up, and Cal, thanks for what you said. It was brought up by one of my opponents last week, and it continues to be brought up on a regular basis. Just one of those things that people ask.
Well, I can say that Ikaika and I are close enough. He shared with me a lot of his personal goings on back at the time. And I respect you for your decisions, Ikaika. I am obviously not going to share what I know, but I know that what you did for your kids, your keiki, is very. I respect you for that. It's a tough. I understand this whole game of politics, and it's tough. And a lot of people would not. A lot of people would have did the politically correct thing to do, and not so much throw your family under the bus, but expose your family to unnecessary scrutiny to protect your political okole. But no, you did not do that. You did what you needed to do to protect your family and to take care of your family issues. And I respect you for that, man. And that's the one thing I don't like about politics is, it's the old saying, right? You can beat me up all you like, but don't mess with my family. But when we enter this arena of politics, unfortunately, your family suffers every time you take a hit, and people enjoy hating on people, and it's a shame. It's a shame, but I respect you for your decision. I supported you for your decision. I continue to support that today, and
So
appreciate
much
you, man.
mahalo, Mel. And it probably would have done at least my political reputation some justice had I shared all of that. That's just not something I was willing to do at that time and have my children read about our family issues. I will tell you, one of my colleagues had filed for divorce about 2 months before I left the Honolulu City Council, and one of our online news media outlets decided to write about the divorce. And when I saw that, that helped to make my that really helped to make my decision for me as well. I thought I don't want to be in that position.
Yeah,
But
the media.
what I thought is, you know what? Their children are going to read that. What's wrong with you?
Yeah, they don't understand. I mean, I and again, I know exactly what you're saying. My kids, as my kids got older, and we've been able to have adult discussions.
Yes.
Yeah, man, it sucks because I just didn't realize the impacts my political career had on their lives growing up. I
Mhm.
do now, and it's unfortunate, yeah, because I didn't see it, and so again, bro, people gonna hate. Let the haters hate. That's the way I look at it now. Protect your family, protect your kids, do what you need to do to protect the cake, and that's exactly what you did. Hats off, man. Hats off.
Much mahalo.
Hey, I did want to have a discussion about tourism in general
Sure.
because some people think we can get rid of tourism. Again, these things are unscripted. Uh, we rely on tourism. We're going to always rely on tourism. The question is over tourism. The question is, are we truly managing tourism? HTA came out with this amazing campaign to convince the people of Hawaii that we were going to go from promoting to managing. And yet I have not seen that. I know we have all these destination management plans. I've read a couple of them. I've read the one for Kauai. And that's all good and well on paper, but the action speaks louder than words. I mean, right after the regional or the destination management plans come out, the state comes up and says, "Oh, we're going to expand Lihue Airport to up to 4 million passengers a year." I mean, that's not managing tourism. No, that's not. That's not. And again, actions speak louder than words. I kind of wanted to get your whole take on the tourism industry. How much is enough? And I did want to say when the state was trying to, or when the state legislature was trying to take more transit accommodation tax, the tourist tax money from us neighbor islands. I want to say this because I think this speaks to your fairness and your objectivity. You stood up for Kauai, man. You stood up. I know I get a lot of credit for going to the ledge and losing my temper, but the fact of the matter is,
You had
the
to.
fact, well, I'm gonna play that. I think I gotta go dig up that video and I'm gonna put them up on my page because it's been a long time. But Ikaika stood up at our state association meeting and basically testified that they didn't think Kauai should take a bigger hit. If in fact the adjustments were made to the TAT allocations, Kauai would have lost money. City and County of Honolulu would have gained, and Ikaika stood up for Kauai and said, "Leave it as is. Kauai doesn't deserve to lose any more funds." And I will never forget that to the day I die, Ikaika. You, which supposed to be there for the City and County of Honolulu, you spoke for Kauai and appreciate that, man. Appreciate that. But
Thank you for
tourism, man. Where the hell are we going? Are we creating a destination? Are we creating a Disneyland for the mainlanders and the international visitors? Is that what we're trying to do, or should we be focusing on preserving our culture? I know I'm rambling, but last night my wife and I were watching this cooking show where this guy goes to all over the Asian continent, and I said, look at these places that they go. A lot of tourists go, but the culture is the same today as it was 100 years ago.
Yes.
They still dress the same. They still use the same cooking utensils. They still fish the same way. They had a watercress garden in the river that this old lady had to go harvest. No matter tourists, they can still let tourists come in, but they never lost their culture.
Okay.
We are losing our culture, Ikaika. I'm not Hawaiian. You are. What's your thoughts?
Well, let me ask you. You were talking about the state plan for Kauai tourism management. When did that plan come out? When was that plan first shared with the people of Kauai?
Oh gosh, man. I'm supposed to be asking the questions, not you. I would say within the last, this whole COVID thing has messed up
The
my
last
time.
year, 2 years?
Yeah, no, it'd been the last year. It was done after COVID.
Okay.
That was the whole thing. Yeah, it's
And the reason I asked that question, that plan should have been put together by the state, Mel. Sorry, I just kicked my desk here. That plan should have been put together, Mel, by the state years ago. HTA and the state legislature for years have neglected to manage the visitor industry. That's why back in 2011, 2012, our office, as a Honolulu City Council member, took it upon ourselves to work with our Windward community to try to manage the industry. And that's where we booted all of the commercial watercraft vendors who had permits out of Kailua Beach Park because they were running amok. And we were getting no help from the state in regulating the commercial watercraft activity in the water and on the Mokulua Islands and on Flat Island, Popoia Island. So the city did what we could. We managed what was happening inside the beach park because that's all we could do. Back in 2016, 2017, as a council member, I got the Honolulu City Council to fund a visitor impact study on the visitor industry on Windward Oahu. Why the Honolulu City Council had to fund a visitor impact study for Windward Oahu is beyond me. That's something that the Hawaii Tourism Authority funds or should be funding. And the Hawaii Tourism Authority certainly has, together with HVCB at the time, Hawaii Visitor Convention Bureau, at the same time, to be able to regulate. But for whatever reason, they weren't doing it. So the city conducted a study. Now, Mel, you're talking about a study being done for Kauai that's been released within the last year, maybe 2 years. All of this could have been done earlier. So my point is, Mel, as Lieutenant Governor, I would work with the neighbor island counties to ensure that there are visitor impact studies that adequately reflect what's occurring and also ensure that neighbor islanders' needs are met. This cannot be a Honolulu-centric approach. So that's why I think it should be county by county, not just with the state involved, though, with state government doing this. The counties have to be involved because, as I pointed out earlier, it's your county council members who are home in your community all day, every day. That's true. And I see your question there. No, my policy does not allow for select vendors to rent to tourists with no regulations that run amok. That is absolutely not true. And I addressed this a little earlier. If I could address this very quickly. The commercial activities that occur at Kailua Beach Park, primarily the watercrafts that are rented, the commercial kayaks, they are rented from a commercially zoned property across the street from Kailua Beach Park. There is no city policy that could prevent this. There are also other private commercial vendors who operate from Kailua town, from commercially zoned properties, where people go to on their own and pick up these kayaks and take them to Kailua Beach Park. There is no policy whatsoever that the Honolulu City Council could enact that would prevent that. So long as a business operates from a commercially zoned private piece of property, they have a right to operate. So what happens now with at the Kailua Beach Center, people pick up a kayak on a hand truck and pull it or push it across the street to Kailua Beach Park. The city can't prevent that. But what the city did prevent are the windsurfing companies and the kayaking companies from renting out their commercial watercrafts on city property. That's the only thing we could stop, unfortunately. What the state could do, though, is cease awarding permits to land on any of the islands. The city has no jurisdiction. I would have been happy to do that. Would have been happy to do that if the city had the jurisdiction. We don't. So we couldn't do that. The only thing I could do is introduce legislation to kick all of these people out of our city beach parks, and we did do that. I wish we could have done more and banning these activities from the islands outside of Kailua Beach. City just didn't have the jurisdiction. But going back to visitor industry management, Mel.
Yeah, I just want to say real quick,
HDA for far too long, Mel, was looking at quantity over quality, putting more heads on beds. It seemed to me that HTA felt that having more than 10 million visitors a year is sustainable. It's not. We need to look to attract quality visitors who are going to spend money here. Why don't we look at attracting the business traveler, the conference traveler, fix the convention center so we can utilize that? I also strongly support visitor impact fees. Starting the fee at $50, maybe we even charge more. Now, are there certain visitors who aren't going to come to Hawaii and pay that fee and instead go to Mexico or instead go to the Caribbean? They may. With all due respect, I say let them go to another destination if they don't want to pay the visitor impact fee. Those aren't the types of visitors that we're trying to attract. And I say that with all due respect.
Yeah, it's the problem is we can do whatever we want, and this is the problem: is you got airlines and hotels that are luring these visitors over with very low airfares, making it so. That's why an HTA should know this. Lord have mercy, HTA should know this. They've been in the business long enough to know that if you have a Mexican vacation at an all-inclusive resort and it's going to cost you $700 to get there and $1,500 for whatever for 5 nights versus $199 round trip fare to Hawaii where it's safe, so supposedly you cannot have it both ways. So and HCA doesn't have any control over the airlines, and that's what I mean. It's, to me, I think that argument is we as a state, in my opinion, and when you become the lieutenant governor, I hope that you will push this, is a carrying capacity study for the state, for each county, that we know what that number is. And at that point, no more approvals for new routes coming to our airports. Right now, the county has absolutely no say. All we know is that yesterday we had 5 mainland planes parked at the airport between 12 and 2, and today we have 7. There's no public hearings. There's no community input. We just got to get stuck with the crap, with the crowded traffic and the busy shops and stores and empty shelves, because the state and the feds don't care. They keep granting more routes, more seats, more passengers, and we don't even know what the capacity. I know this for Kauai anyway. We are over capacity. Mm-hmm. So to even suggest that we're going to expand Lihue Airport, off limits, man. That's not good. And that's what I'm hoping the state leadership is going to say. Oh, we cannot control the visitor that comes because we're competing with the airlines. They're bringing in the cheapskates. I'm gonna say it. I'll call it like I see it. They're gonna bring in the cheapskates, right? So many people go to Vegas,
competing with the rest of us, using our beaches, using our parks that we pay for.
Absolutely, and that sucks, man. It sucks when the local people gotta make way. For
I want the conference traveler who's going to go to Polynesian Cultural Center for entertainment, who's going to stay at Hilton Hawaiian Village and stay on property and go to the lagoon, and who's going to rent the big wheel, 3-wheel tricycle to paddle around the lagoon, who's not going to compete with us at Kapi'olani Park or at Kailua Beach Park. Those are the visitors that we want. Those are the visitors I would argue that we want. Now, some people say the visitor impact fee may not necessarily disincentivize people from coming. Well, there was a recent survey that was done by Honolulu's daily paper, I believe, that actually showed visitors have said, because of the fact that coming to Hawaii is more expensive, and if government implemented any new fees, it would cause them to not return. So there is a survey already documented showing that increased fees would stop people from coming. There was another question as to what number of visitors are sustainable. That really needs to be looked at. I just know that 10 million is too much. I would argue that 9 million is too much too. We've seen data that 8 million visitors brought in more revenue than 10 million visitors is bringing in now. And Mel, that goes back to what you were saying earlier. That's because we're bringing in the folks who are coming here for $250 round trip. Those aren't the visitors we want to attract. But at the same time, I'm extremely excited that the Council for Native Hawaiian Advancement has, at least up to this point, been the successful bidder for the state's marketing contract. Because I think CNHA will switch to a different policy of not more, but quality of visitors, and focusing on a cultural experience for our visitors, because that's what CNHA does. So I would like to at least give the Council for Native Hawaiian Advancement, under the leadership of Kuhio Lewis, their executive director, the opportunity to make this work. Lord knows that HTA and HVCB hasn't done the job. Let's see if CNHA can do better. Let's at least give them the opportunity, Mel, to see if a culturally based approach can reduce the number of visitors and at the same time bring in the money necessary for our state to be able to pay its bills and give our residents some relief. After all of our government-owned beach parks are paid for and maintained by the taxpayers of this state. Mm-hmm. Therefore, it's the taxpayers of this state who should primarily benefit from those areas. They pay for it.
All right. We are like, I know we went a little long, but we started late. So I'll give you one more last question because I've seen it come up a couple of times, and then we'll let you go ahead and give us your closing thoughts. Cashless bill. We know the governor vetoed the bill. What are your thoughts on this incredible bill that was going to allow theft or nonviolent Class C felonies and below out without bail? What are your thoughts?
Honestly, Mel, when this discussion first happened, I was of the opinion that government should completely do away with cash bail. And the reason I thought that, how I arrived at that position, and I've since evolved, and I'll explain. But the reason that I arrived at that position, there was a masseuse in Honolulu who was gunned down in his place of business. And when the person accused of gunning him down was arrested, he was set with a $1 million bail. Because the accused could afford to pay that $1 million bail, he was allowed to go home and await his trial, where, as far as I know, he's still at home awaiting his trial. But he still has family members, particularly his in-laws, who are extremely concerned for their safety. But yet this defendant sits at home awaiting trial because he could afford the $1 million. If my brother-in-law had done the same thing, same crime, he couldn't have come up with $1 million to be bailed out of jail, and he'd be sitting in prison simply for the fact that he doesn't have the means to pay. That being said, I think that rather than eliminating cash bail, we need to ensure that the bail fits the crime. The bail fits the crime that the accused has been arrested for. And that's really where we need to start this discussion. Someone who's accused of gunning someone down in cold blood, we need to look at their assets and their ability to pay. And those types of people possibly look at increasing their bail or asking them to put more at risk on the table to ensure that they come back for trial. So my position on the cash bail bill that Governor Ige vetoed, I would have urged a veto of that particular bill. I believe it went way too far. And I had extensive conversations with the State of Hawaii Organization of Police Officers President Bobby Kavako about this issue. I also talked to his officers, not only in Honolulu, but in other areas, particularly Maui, who were gravely concerned that that bill went way too far. I agreed with them. So while we need reform, I don't support I no longer support eliminating cash bail and starting over from zero. We need reforms, but not an elimination. And we also need to look at those people who can afford to pay and look for something else that we can implement to keep them in prison awaiting trial if in fact they're dangerous to society.
Yeah, I think, stealing a car, breaking it into your garage, that all qualify it to be, you just, there's no bail. You just you get the paperwork and then you go home. I really wish we had a system in place where there would be an assessment done. You know, technically, constitutionally, you got to be brought before a judge within 48 hours.
That's right.
And in that 48 hours, you would hope that we had a system where these people would be assessed as to the
That's right.
danger to the community. And anyway, there's a lot of things to work out.
And I would absolutely agree with you on all of that,
Yeah.
Mel. I'd absolutely
I mean,
agree with you.
we could talk for hours and hours and hours, but I want to respect your time as well as our viewers' time. I did want to give you an opportunity to share whatever you want with the viewers. Like I said, ballots have already dropped. A lot of votes have already been cast, but there's still a lot of people that are still deciding. So go ahead and take a few minutes, as long as you want, and share why you believe you're the best candidate for lieutenant governor.
Well, I would like to answer the question regarding the lady yesterday at Kaimana Beach Park. That's come up at least twice. I do believe that people who bother our marine life, which is federally not allowed, need to be held accountable. When people choose to ignore regulations prohibiting them from coming within so much distance of a monk seal, of a turtle, of a whale, they need to be held accountable. So I do believe that lady who did what she did yesterday needs to be held accountable, and it shouldn't be all that difficult to find out who she is. So I hope I've answered that particular question. I'd like to thank you all again very much for the opportunity to talk story with all of you this evening and share a little bit with you about my candidacy for lieutenant governor, some of the policy positions that we've come up with and that we're advocating. There's a lot of work to be done on visitor industry management. I don't pretend that everything done in Windward Oahu is perfect. It's certainly not perfect. But in Windward Oahu, we did what we could. The city did what we could with the regulations and the jurisdiction that we have. I would have been absolutely willing to ban commercial landings on all of the islets off of Kailua Bay, Popoia Island and the Mokulua Islands. We just simply don't have at the city level that jurisdiction. It's not there. It's not there at all. It just simply isn't there. So we could have done that. I think that if we had those tools at our disposal, Mel, we would have been able to do more. As lieutenant governor, those are proposals that we're going to be able to do and that we're going to be able to enact. Likewise, Mel, as you talked about the airport situation in Kauai, that needs to involve more of the county leaders, Mel. And if elected lieutenant governor and you're elected to the Kauai County Council again, Mel, I would like to have these discussions at the county level. I understand you don't have the jurisdiction, but I'd certainly like to work with you in setting up community hearings on Kauai, so at least I know that we're hearing from the people of Kauai and their true sentiments. Even if it's only in an advisory capacity, at least we're getting to hear from you folks. That's huge, that you're at least brought to the table and that you're not ignored. Additionally, I commit to all of our neighbor islanders across this state. If elected lieutenant governor, our office will appear on each island at least quarterly in your communities to talk story with you folks, with your council members present. They'll be invited to hear from you directly as to how state government can best help. A lot of times, as I move across this state and I'm headed back to Kauai tomorrow, a lot of times I hear Ikaika, when people run for governor, people run for lieutenant governor, we only see you every 4 years. I ask that you please go back and take a look at my record with the State Association of Counties. We were always on the neighbor islands. We were always communicating with your council members. That's not going to change. And that activity on the neighbor islands, truthfully, is only going to increase if I become lieutenant governor. I ask for you folks' support this primary election. I'd be honored to have you folks with us. If you have any additional questions, please shoot us an email at ikaika@ikaikaanderson.com. You can also phone our campaign line, 808-259-2022. My staff does give me the emails. They do give me the voice messages, and we do respond. On the bed and breakfast question that continuously has come up, I got to say, I have learned a lot from Heidi this evening, if she's still here, and her point. She's very passionate on this issue, as I am. And Heidi, if I offended you earlier, I sincerely apologize. This is just something that I've been extremely passionate about myself. But I've learned a lot from the questions that you've asked here tonight. Mel also shared with me the questions that you asked prior to us starting tonight's meeting. I would welcome the opportunity to talk with you further. If you'd shoot us an email, I'd be happy to provide my cell number. And if you're open and you've got some availability, whether you voted or not isn't the issue. I would really welcome the opportunity to grab a cup of coffee with you in Winter Oahu and just hear more from you on that issue, how you formed your opinions, and how you feel that the opinions that you form can help the situation. That's just an issue that we've been working on for a long time, Heidi, and I'll be happy to talk story with you on that. Same with Ann Medeiros. I've heard different opinions from Ann too, and be more than happy to talk story with her. And I've never been in bed with Airbnb. And in fact, as I said earlier, I told Airbnb straight, I couldn't help them with their legislation. I voted for Bill 89. They wanted me to vote against Bill 89. They were absolutely unhappy with my vote, but they knew ahead of time where I was going to vote and how I was going to vote and why I felt the way I felt. I'm more than happy to talk story with you on that as well. And that goes to anybody here. Please reach out. Send us an email, give us a call. I'm more than happy to talk story with anybody on any of these issues further. And again, Mel, I really appreciate you and the village giving me the opportunity tonight. Can't thank you enough.
Thanks, Ikaika. I know some of you asking about who you voting for governor, and he answered that question early on tonight. I suggest you go back and rewatch. Also about the school safety, I think he made it clear that he would not support lifting the mask mandate from schools. And as far as the voting, if someone asks me, mm-hmm. who do I endorse for county council, I won't. I'm not going to answer that question because I'm running for county council, and I think Ikaika, the question I posed to Ikaika, because I had gotten the question earlier about his relationship with a specific candidate. Well, I think it's fair. The fair question is, how do you get along with everybody? And I think Ikaika explained why he is not endorsing or supporting any one particular candidate. That he's got to work with whoever the governor is. And so I don't know what more else to say on that. But that,
to be fair, Bill, I haven't voted yet. I'm actually contemplating the possibility of not even voting in the governor's race. That has crossed my mind, to be fair to my three friends who are running. That's a tough one for me, to advocate for one friend over the other too. That is hard for me.
Yeah, it's tough. And
even for my children, two of my children are of voting age. Two of the candidates have been personal friends of mine and their mother. They're torn between that too. And even my son told me today, Dad, I don't even know if I want to vote. What am I going to do? Vote for one uncle over another one? I'm not sure I want to do that. So my son and I had that conversation today too, where even he's not so sure he wants to pick one uncle over the other. He doesn't know Mrs. Cayetano, but he knows the other two pretty well.
Yeah. It's tough. It's tough. And again, I think, you know, it's interesting how even on the debates, some of the commentators or the moderators will ask candidates who they support for governor or who they support for lieutenant governor. And I think, you know, at some point, you know, that's a personal choice. And I just hope, and I'm satisfied with your response, that you can work with any one of those leading candidates.
I gotta work with. I have to be able to work with any of them. I mean, if elected lieutenant governor and I get shoved into a corner, do the citizens of Hawaii anything? I'm collecting a paycheck north of $160,000 a year to do absolutely nothing if the governor is going to stick me in a corner. I mean, that doesn't do anything for us.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I just want to say thank you, bro, for spending the time. And to our village, I appreciate you guys' patience in the beginning. We had a little technical glitch. We got that fixed. And thank you all. Thank you all for your questions, and appreciate your responses and your very candid responses to a lot of these questions. Wednesday night, we're back with Dr. Tim Brown and Dr. Lee Altenberg to discuss the COVID issue. The new numbers come out. And on Thursday night, we'll have Jill Tokuda running for Congress. She will be on our show. It's a special night, 7 o'clock. We won't be doing a show on Friday, so we will move to Thursday. So if you want to hear from Jill, we had Pat Bronco on. Now we'll have Joe Tokuda, and should be a very interesting discussion. So with that, folks, appreciate you guys. We love you guys. Take care. Stay safe. God bless. Have a good night, Ikaika. Stay safe, my man. Take care.